and welcome back to What Are You Watching? I am your host, Ben, and with me, my guest today is Taylor. How you doing today, my man?
I am fantastic. I'm ready to talk about some spooky stuff. That's the burden everybody has to carry when they book me on their show. Is I'm gonna make you watch something messed up, and we're gonna talk about it. Thank you for having
I'm,
me on.
no worries, man. Thank you for coming on. This is going to be fun. To tell you the truth, I was never a big fan of horror,
Yeah,
but a few years ago I got into it a little. So I'm still getting my ways in, and I like this. I have to say, I like this movie. We of course are talking about the 2006 Silent Hill. Is that right?
that's
Right?
correct. That's right. The
Yeah.
2006 movie adaptation of Silent Hill. When you first asked me to come on, I tried to think like, because I'd heard um, Benny's episode and Moose's, and I was like, what have I been watching that's like relevant and like poignant? And then I realized like that's not really the format of the show. It's just supposed to be what I've been watching, right? That's the whole idea.
Exactly.
So I'm a big horror fan, as we've already quickly established here, and that's true in everything. Movies I watch, books I read, games I play. I love horror just as a concept, as a genre, and so Silent Hill, for those who don't know, is originally a survival horror video game series, starting way back in the day on the very first PlayStation, and is I won't go. I don't. Maybe we'll get into it throughout the episode, but um, has a very complicated history, and Silent Hill as a fan base, we've been very hungry for new games, movies, anything for the last couple of years. It's been very hard to be a Silent Hill fan lately, but they just announced a ton of new stuff all at once. They did this big broadcast thing, and they
Oh,
announced a couple
wow.
new games. They announced like a live streaming event, and they announced a new Silent Hill movie, which I was actually pretty surprised about. And because of that, I went, you know what? I'm going to go back and watch that first Silent Hill movie. And here we are. That's the origin story of why we're talking about this.
So, we'll get into the movie you watch in a minute, but who's going to be in the new one? Like, do
Haven't we,
you know anything about this new one coming out?
so they haven't gotten that far as far as casting or anything. At least they haven't announced it. What's interesting is it is being directed by this guy Christoph Gans, who is the director of this movie that we're talking about
Okay.
tonight, which is actually quite exciting, and we'll talk about him throughout, I'm sure, too. Um, but he is a like bona fide fan of this franchise and these games. Like he's really, really passionate about Silent Hill, which shows a lot in this one. And so the fact that he's coming back is pretty exciting. And they haven't said as far as casting goes, but they have said it's like a complete direct adaptation of Silent Hill 2, the second game, which is, I'd say, for most purposes, the most popular Silent Hill game. They also announced they're doing a full blown remake of that game, which is quite exciting too. So whereas this movie we're talking about tonight is mostly an adaptation of the first game, it's got
Okay.
some differences in it. It's kind of an amalgamation of several of the games, but this new one they're doing is going to be apparently a direct beat for beat adaptation of the second game. So that's pretty exciting.
Wow. So let's get into this movie.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell the people the basic plot of the movie before we get into it?
Sure. And this is again mostly an adaptation of the very first game, which is kind of I would say the first Silent Hill game is a little more loose on the story. It's very much more atmospheric and psychological, and the plot gets more detailed in the second and third games. But um, the movie is about a mother and her child, and the child is haunted by night terrors, wakes up screaming, she sleepwalks, and whenever these things she has these episodes, she always calls out the name of a ghost town called Silent Hill. And so the mother decides to take her daughter there to figure out what is her association. I should also say her daughter's adopted, so she
Okay.
doesn't know. Up until she adopted her, she's not sure where exactly she came from or who her biological family is, and so figures there is some sort of connection with her in this town. And then on the way there, they get in a car accident. Her daughter disappears, and she's forced to walk into Silent Hill alone, which again is this abandoned ghost town, and it changes and shape shifts throughout the day, seemingly into different dimensions, some of which are filled with wild fundamentalist, like puritanical weirdos, and the other ones are filled with terrible, fleshy, vomiting, stabby monsters. All the stuff I love.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I got from watching this for the first time is the next time I watch this, I probably shouldn't do it right after I ate lunch.
No,
Probably not the best idea.
no, yeah. If you've got a weak stomach, it's not. I would say it's not the most like aggressively gory movie. It definitely can be in spots, but I think it's used sparingly enough. It's not exhausting. But yeah, somebody does get their all of their skin removed like it's a raincoat at one point, and that is something to see. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be eating spaghetti or something when that happens.
It had a great cast too. I mean, you want to talk about the cast a little bit?
Yeah, no, I think it does have a nice sort of everything I think about this movie is underrated. I think it was not very well received at the time. I feel like it didn't get a fair shake. I think a lot of people are reassessing this movie, but almost every aspect I think is underrated. Rhoda Mitchell is the star. She plays Rose, the mother of the child we mentioned earlier, which is one of the big changes to this versus the game. The original game is about a father and his missing child. They changed it to a mother and her missing child, which I did a little research about because I always thought that was, what was it, just a casting thing? They had Rhoda Mitchell and that's the way they went. And I guess they had made the change first while writing the script. I think part of it was they thought it would be weird to show a man in such distress and such fear and such like terror, which I don't really agree with. But I think what ultimately made them go this way is they realized that the story was going to primarily be about, maternal love and maternal protection, because you have the dynamic of Rose and Sharon, and then you have the dynamic of let's see, I gotta remember. Let's see, is it Dahlia? It is Dahlia, because some of the names are different too. Dahlia and Alessa. So you have like this yin and yang, dark and light thing going on, which I think ultimately was a good call, mostly just because Rhoda Mitchell's really, really good in this movie. When she's vulnerable and a little more, unsure and consumed by fear, she's great. She plays that scream queen role very well. And then by the back half of the movie, you see her go into this very headstrong protector mode, and she's fantastic, I think, as that as well. You got Sean Bean, the legendary Sean Bean. Now,
I love Sean Bean and everything he does, right? I mean, did he have a bad movie in his roster? I don't think so.
I'm sure he's got, nothing comes to mind immediately. Nothing that I really dislike. Well, actually, that's not true. He's in the sequel to this movie, and that movie stinks. So yes, he does.
Okay.
But to that end, Sean Bean does not die in this movie. Pretty impressive considering it's a horror movie, and a lot of people die in this movie.
Yeah.
So he makes it out. Doesn't get much to do in this. I would say, it's not a perfect movie. I definitely have some gripes with it. And I think his entire subplot is pretty mundane compared to the rest of the movie. They'll be in the middle of something really intense, and they'll be like, let's see what Bean's doing. I'm like, I don't really care what Bean's doing. He's going to the library. But I agree. Bean's a legend. Laurie Holden, of course, Walking Dead fame, plays Sybil, the cop who is a character from the video game as well. She's probably the most one-to-one like adapted character where it's like that's the character from the game. She's great as well. Again, very, very, gives like T2 Terminator vibes at the start, I think, and that helmet and the coat.
Right.
But she gets to be a little bit of a dynamic character too, where she starts off as this very determined cop and kind of a foil for Rose, and then becomes very much her ally along the way. I meant to look up before we started, and I did this. Jodelle Ferlin, that's the little girl who plays. a couple characters. She looked so familiar to me, and I don't know if I've seen her in anything else. Let me see.
Yeah, she looked familiar to me too. I couldn't put my finger on it though.
Oh, I figured it out. You'll think this is funny. I figured out exactly why she looks familiar to me, because she is in the third film of the Twilight saga, Twilight Eclipse.
Ooh.
She plays, I see, she plays one of the newborn vampires in it. I have a very storied public relation with the Twilight saga on the internet. I'll go to bat for you. You could bring me back on here and we'll talk about the Twilight saga one day.
Oh, I'll have you on that. I'll have you on. I'll have you back for that, but I will not be watching those movies. I made that vow to myself. I will never watch any of those movies.
You're missing out. You know what? Those are also flawed movies, but I kind of admire just how nuts they are. Yeah. No. Anyway, yeah, I could run down the whole cast list here, but the point is, I think the cast is. I wanted to look up Jodelle too because especially for a child actor, I think she's pretty great in this and plays 3 characters and to the
that's impressive.
Yeah, the same way that Rada's really good and dynamic and gives a very dimensional performance. I'd say she does too, as 3 very different iterations of the same person. So, yeah, great cast. The director, and I mentioned him earlier, Christoph Gans. This movie gets made just purely because he's a huge Silent Hill fan. It is initially his idea, so it's not even like Konami was optioning this out to studios and going, we want to make a Silent Hill movie, which probably would have happened eventually, but he comes to them, he shot this whole audition tape almost and said I love this game, I played this game, somebody has to make a movie of this and it has to be me, and here's why. And
wow.
I think that's pretty spectacular. I think it's also kind of rare even now when the idea of adaptations and IPs and this and that are so rampant and that's what's always getting made. I feel like it's pretty rare that a filmmaker goes calls their shot and they're like, I want to make this, and it's only because they said that it gets made. You know what I mean?
Well, I can only think of one other time that actually worked. And maybe it's not the same exact thing, and when they made that Deadpool test footage.
That's true, right?
That leaked online.
Right.
We got that movie because of that.
You're probably, I think you're probably correct. Eventually I'm sure, they'd be churning out. What else we got the rights to at Fox? They probably would have made a Deadpool eventually, right? But the version that we got, I think, has everything to do with Ryan Reynolds spearheading the charge.
Right.
And we probably would have gotten a much worse movie had he not done that. So I think that
we might have gotten whatever that thing was at the end of the X-Men Origins Wolverine. We might have gotten a spin-off of that thing.
I always for good reason forget that happened. So much so that when they announced Hugh Jackman's going to be in Deadpool 3, I was like, oh, that'd be neat to see those characters together. Completely forgetting that we did see those characters together because I just erased that from my brain.
Well, did we? I mean, we saw Wayne and Logan together. And we never really got to see Deadpool and Wolverine.
Right.
And then you didn't count the end of Deadpool 2 when he goes back in time and shoots that thing in the head.
Yeah. No, we saw the suggestion of those characters together, but not quite the right, not as it should be. You're right. But yeah, no, I think that's so spectacular, and that's why I'm so excited he's doing this new one. I'm a little hesitant to get excited for it because I'm still in disbelief that it's going to happen. But the fact that they have somebody behind it that very intimately cares about this. And I was watching a behind the scenes sort of documentary about the movie last night, which is up on YouTube. I forget exactly what it's called, but if you just type in, making of Silent Hill, I'm sure it'll come up. That went into his process and the screenwriter's process and how to them, ultimately they were going to make an adaptation, and that means it's not going to be exactly the same. It can't be the same. The game and the movie are very different mediums. But what they can do and what they have to do is honor the spirit of it and keep that intact. And that, even though they made plot changes, character changes, obviously pacing changes, you have to go from a, 10-hour game to a 2-hour movie. You got to make big changes, but they kept the integrity of the spirit of that game and managed to hone in on the things that make that game work. And instead of making it an interactive experience, making it a passive experience, but absolutely nailed it. That's why I keep saying I think this is very underrated. I think it always gets swept into the dustbin of like, there's been no good video game movies, right?
I mean, think about this thing. This is a very solid movie. Why isn't it put up when talking about video game movies?
Yeah.
I mean, if you didn't tell me this was based on a video game, I wouldn't have known.
Mhm.
And it's a very good horror movie on its own right. So
Yeah, and I think that's also a great point. An important side to it is like it also can't just work on the level of for someone like me who's played the original game and and goes, oh, I know what that character is, I know what that moment is. It also has to work for an audience that hasn't seen the movie and has to just be a good horror movie, which I think it is. I think it's a wildly unique horror movie in that sense. It doesn't really look or feel like anything else, save for maybe Jacob's Ladder, which I think is also a really underrated horror movie, but that's not a coincidence because Jacob's Ladder influenced Team Silent when they made the game in the first place. So it's a little cyclical in that way. But I think it's a very unique and really strong standalone horror movie. And then also I think as an adaptation, it works in a way that I don't think really any, we've seen some decent ones now. Like I'll go to bat for Detective Pikachu. I like that movie.
Me too.
But Detective Pikachu is also like, it's an adaptation of like Pokemon at large, right? It's not like, okay, we're gonna take that 3-act story and we're gonna put it in the movie. Or like Sonic the Hedgehog. I like those movies too. But that's not, that's taking the entire IP of Sonic and like, how do we distill it down to a movie? Where this has the much more personal job of taking this one game, or kind of a few of the games, I suppose. It's, like I said, it's kind of an amalgam of some different things, but distilling it down into a very compelling 3-act story. And I think it does a terrific job while also giving itself time to have fun and, plot out some really good scares and monster stuff. Because, oh boy, I love monsters.
Now I noticed, maybe I missed them, but I didn't notice any jump scares. Is there a reason for that, or did they just not feel the need to have many in there?
That's actually a really great observation that I didn't. I just watched this again last night, and I didn't really think about that. But I think that again harkens back into, okay, how do we honor the spirit of it and what kind of horror Silent Hill is? Because Silent Hill is a game franchise. It's become less consistent over the years, but at a time stood neck and neck with another really popular horror franchise called Resident Evil, right? And Resident Evil has seen very, very many movie adaptations.
Yes.
Many of which I would say are not respectful of the spirit of those games. Resident Evil's a lot sillier than Silent Hill anyway. But I would say those movies, I would freely sweep those away in the aforementioned dustbin of poor video game movies.
Did you see the new one that's on Netflix? It might be a series.
I've not yet, and I've heard a lot of things that don't encourage me to go check it out.
Okay.
In a world where we just have so much stuff to watch, it's hard for me to sit down in front of something that I've been hearing is not great. If it was just a movie, probably I would, but you're right, it's a series, so a bit of a bigger time investment. And I still need to watch the latest Resident Evil movie, which is Welcome to Raccoon City, which I've heard is not so great either, but at least it's, probably 90-minute experience.
I haven't seen them, but they feel like a lot of what would have been directly home movies. direct-to-DVD movies back in the day, right?
All the Resident Evil movies have been theatrically released, believe it or not. Every single one of them. I think they all actually done relatively well commercially. That's why they. I mean, I forget. I think there's maybe 7, maybe 8 now with the latest one. But yeah, I think I'll to what you had asked earlier, which is what about jump scares. Silent Hill. I ramble a lot, so forgive me. Silent Hill.
You're in the right place, my man. You're in the right place.
Yeah. Silent Hill is not. The horror of it is very psychological, which you maybe wouldn't think on its face because it's got all these monsters and faceless nurses with knives and all this, very direct physical kinds of threats. But Silent Hill as a game is very atmospheric. It's very patient. It takes its time and it picks its moments to be scary. And so much of it is, I think, more about instilling like the dread of feeling totally alone and totally vulnerable and being in a world that doesn't make sense anymore. And it's not so much about what's right around the corner. Boo, it got you, which this movie, I think, again, honors the integrity of what it was adapting and knows how to pace those scares to where it is gradual and it creeps up on you but doesn't jump around the corner. It's all encompassing, the darkness and the alienness of it.
In the atmosphere
Yes.
that gets you. I mean, the atmosphere is terrifying yet beautiful at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it's very valuable. I think it's a lot harder to achieve, I think, in an effective way. A lot of people don't like jump scares and can be very critical about them. I'm not. I mean, I love all facets of horror, really. Like I love all interpretations, and I love all the different approaches to it. So I don't have a problem with something that's loud and in your face and got jump scares too. I think that has its place as well. But I think it's a lot easier to scare somebody by making a loud noise and throwing a scary face up on the screen than it is to make a world and set a tone that is so filled with dread in of itself that instead of sitting there waiting for the next scary thing to happen, all of it is just scary because it's all part of the world that is frightening you. And I think we're seeing more movies like that now, but I think this coming out the time that it did, pretty damn impressive because I don't think that was really the trend and popularized like studio horror at the time.
Well, I would say one of my favorite horror movies that I've seen in the last few years, you probably agree, is A Quiet Place. And that's all A Quiet Place. You're gripping your seat, not wanting to make a noise, scared to your life. But there are aliens, but there's no loudness because they're catnip with that movie, right?
Right. No, I agree. I do like both those Quiet Place movies. I'm even looking forward to the new spinoff that they're doing. As long as they have still good ideas, and it doesn't get too repetitive or anything. But that's I agree. That one is one that's more contingent on pacing, and eventually does have its big loud moments because they're the contrast to the quiet moments that most of the movie's made up of. So when it has those loud moments, they're very effective. But so much of it is the anticipation of what could happen. And yeah, I agree. I like those movies, and those are great to see in theaters if you have a solid audience too. Shug, my man.
Shug.
What's going on? Shug's one of the greats. Thanks for tuning in, buddy. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you.
Something I do want to make sure I also mention too is the score, the soundtrack. Did that stick out to you, the score at all?
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure it out. I couldn't place my finger on it. Who is that composer? Do you know?
So again, and I almost wonder if the director fought for this. He's a Japanese composer by the name of Akira Yamaoka, and he is the composer of the games as well. So all that music you're hearing, which ranges from like these very synth-based kind of ambient songs that add a lot of flavor to the world, I would say, to also these, very stringy horror tracks, to like very industrial stuff, to even like string songs. All those compositions, and they might have re-recorded them for the movie. In fact, I bet they did, but they all come from the original trilogy of Silent Hill games. So everything down to the score. They didn't say like, oh, let's hire somebody else, let's get some work from hire guy to make up a quick horror movie score. They even insisted it's got to sound like those games, because the score, I would say the score in Silent Hill is just as important as anything else of it. Like people like Akira Yamaoka is the guy. That's who people want to hear.
It did sound like they put like that movie it filled with passion, and you can feel it watching. You can feel like they really care about this IP and property. Yeah, I wish we would get more studios would do that. Stuff, right?
I do too. I mean, I think a lot of again, so much of the studio system now is like, we've got the rights to this. What is it? It's I don't know. It's an action figure from the 80s. I don't know. Find a guy who wants to direct it, right? And you could still make good movies out of that system too. Obviously, if you look at something like the Marvel movies right now, most of those, with like the exception, I would say, of like Guardians of the Galaxy, that was James Gunn, I think, coming up and saying, hey, you got these dumb characters. I know you're not going to do anything with them, but I've got a really good idea. So if you let me do it, I'll make it as good as Iron Man or Spider-Man or your most marquee character. He was right. Most of those, though, are them saying like, yeah, we got Hulk, we got Captain America. We're going to make a Captain America movie. Let's make some calls and see who we can get to direct it. Where I think the really, really special stuff is when someone says, no, I've got the take, I've got the vision, this is important to me. And you got somebody like a James Gunn who's really like the last decade of his career has been predicated on that, only doing stuff that you really care about and you appreciate, and having a fan in that director's chair, I think makes such a world of difference. It's not always required, but I think that's ideally that's who you want making stuff like this.
I mean, look at Peacemaker on HBO Max. Who would have thought a Peacemaker TV show would have been that successful? Not me. I don't know about you, man.
It's like my favorite DC thing of the last, save for the Batman, because I'm the same way I'm a huge horror fan. I'm a huge Batman guy. But I would say it's one of the best DC things in years. I loved Peacemaker. And again, like a D-list dog shit tier character that nobody wanted to do anything with, right? That was sitting down in the filing cabinet somewhere. And he said, open that shit up. I've got a take on Peacemaker. Not only do I have a take on Peacemaker, I got like 10 hours of Peacemaker for you. That's how much I've got.
Well, and don't forget the Suicide Squad. The second one.
Yeah.
Was great, and Peacemaker was in that, so I don't know. I feel like James Gunn is one of those directors who can go into a studio and get any money he wants to make a movie about. You know what I mean?
And now he's running like the whole party over there, so I think...
Good on him. Good on. I mean, we're getting Kevin Bacon in an MCU thing. How great is that?
Yeah, as himself. It's funny. It's funny. That does say that, they got to make a call there. Like, okay, are we okay with burning the Kevin Bacon ask? Because once we do this, we can't have him play, any of our actual Marvel characters, right?
Right.
So, are we definitely confident we don't want Kevin Bacon again? No? Okay. And I think that's fine.
That's a good point, because now they can't use him for another kick. Wow.
Yeah, or if unless they do, something out of the multiverse or whatever. But
right.
But Kevin Bacon as himself, and I think that's a funny spin for Marvel, because there's not many like prestige actors anymore that have a Marvel thing. Like the list is getting lower and shorter, so.
They already know Daniel Day-Lewis to show up in one of his movies. They'll be happy.
Yeah. But yeah, back to Silent Hill. I love the soundtrack to this. Again, it's so important. Um, it, how did you feel? I also want to ask you because I know you watched this for the first time.
Like,
How'd you like those monster designs?
they were intense, but I like them. I like a good monster design.
Yeah,
Like, my favorite monster design, I know it's cliche. I love the xenomorph from the Alien movies.
of course. I mean, I think that's basically the greatest, right? Like he doesn't really get much better than that. Um, you know, too bad we peaked back in like '79, but you know, it really is the best. But I do love, I love these, and I'm sure at this point it wouldn't surprise you to hear that like everything here is ripped from one of the games. Like all the designs here are you know, now in the games there's a little, you know, they're less detailed, especially the PlayStation 1 game, very polygonal, less detailed. So you get to see, there's a lot of creativity in figuring out how those things are going to play in live action. You get to design it for yourself, but they look great and so much practicality in this. This is a deceptively practical movie. You wouldn't even think it almost, and like the ambition of what they're doing and what they're portraying, but so much of this is on set. They actually found a legit ghost town where they shot a lot of the exteriors at, or it wasn't quite a ghost town. I guess it was like largely abandoned or being renovated and stuff, like this block they found where a lot of like the main street shots are when they're like out in front of the pharmacy and stuff like that. But that's all a real street. They did some movie magic to make it look like it had been abandoned for 30 years. And then they CG'd the fog in because you can't practically pipe in fog outdoors. It's not going to work. But for a lot of the other, some of the exterior shots are on studio, they're on sets, so they could pipe in practical fog. Like the entire road where they shoot, you know, the stuff with Rose and Sybil and the car and all that entire road was in a studio that they built, piped in all that fog. The hospital, the school, like all those are real sets. Almost all the monsters are like purely practical. When you're having stuff like a two-legged faceless man who vomits acid at you, or you know that horrific like contortioned, like almost borderline BDSM like guy in the bathroom creeps out of the stall, and you know you have of course the famous Pyramid Head, who's like the big recurring almost slasher-esque monster in this. You know the big pyramid on his head. His inclusion in this is a little controversial with like purist Silent Hill fans because he's not from the first game, he's from the second game, and his entire existence is very, very connected to the main character of Silent Hill 2. He doesn't really have anything to do with the Alessa and the cult plot and stuff like that. So his inclusion's a little controversial for Silent Hill purists, but he's kind of the unofficial mascot of the series. He's very popular. He's got a great design. And if you were going to make one Silent Hill movie, I don't think anybody could resist including him. So I get it. He's fantastic.
And does that mean he probably won't be in the new one?
He would have to be. So, I mean, if you were going to do a Silent Hill 2 movie, you would have to so radically change it to not put Pyramid Head in it. So I think their interpretation here is more like he's a recurring presence in the town. You know, he's more static, where again in the game, he's very much tied to like the psychological state of your main character. It's a resemble like an executioner for somebody who's feeling guilty and like wants to be punished. So his relation to this is a little different, but I think he'll have to be in the new movie, and he shows up even again. So I actually rewatched the sequel to this, which is called Silent Hill Revelations 3D.
Oi.
I watched it last night. I wasn't going to, but I was folding laundry, and as soon as this one finished, I was watching it on Hulu, so it just immediately started playing the next one. And after like 10 minutes, I was like, okay, you know what? Because I hadn't seen it since it came out. I was like, I'll watch it. maybe I could reassess this in a new way that I would actually end up liking it. No, it's really terrible and it's cheap and it's silly and it's got none of the same people working on it, save for Sean Bean, and it's got like none of the integrity, and it's just very, very, very stupid and cheap looking. And this is not a franchise that lends itself to making a 3D movie.
Yeah, I only seen the first one, and I can't imagine what I'm getting a post finished version conversion 3D would look like. I can't imagine that very good.
It looks awful, and it's as a consequence of it having to be so 3D. There's a lot more really cheap looking CG, in contrast to this, which very sparingly and effectively uses CG. The other movie, Revelations, like really leans on it, and I'm not like an anti CG purist necessarily. I don't harp on it that if it's used well, it's used well, but it's not used well in the sequel at all. It's embarrassing, and most, again, Silent Hill fans, no one really remembers it fondly, and I was hoping I could change that, but no, it is just terrible. It's terrible. It sucks.
Yeah, well, he a new director too.
Yeah, and I don't remember his name, but yeah, Christoph had nothing to do with that movie. I would love to know what the story is behind there. Why I'm guessing because they wanted to make a dumb, cheap 3D sequel, and he was like, "Well, I'm not going to betray the spirit of Silent Hill."
It sounds like, and I have nothing to back this up. I mean, it sounds like the first one made a little bit of money, so they're like, okay, this is going to be a thing. So that can put more attention to it. That's beef it up. That's doing the 3D, and then backfired on them. Do you think that's what happened more or less?
Probably they made this, and I don't know. Let me see. I've got it pulled up here. Let's see how much it ultimately cost. It doesn't feel like a cheap movie. $50 million. Okay, in the grand scheme, still kind of a cheap movie, but kind of expensive for a horror movie. And this movie, I feel like, is a risk because Silent Hill is a big deal to gaming, horror gamers at this point. But not your average guy walking down the street doesn't know what Silent Hill is,
Right.
which I would say is even still true. And it makes a little over 100 million, so it just about breaks even, all things considered. So they probably said, yeah, let's make another one. Let's make it even cheaper so we can have a guaranteed return on it. Let's see. I bet I can even, let's see. The next one was made for 20 million. That's 30 million less.
There you go.
And grossed 55.9 million. So again, just about broke as even as they did the first time. So I don't know, maybe it proved worth it for them, but obviously they did not make any more for quite some time after that. Yeah, go ahead.
After you.
No, I was just gonna say, I think your theory is probably correct. It was, like a lot of things, they said we can make this for even cheaper. I bet, again, also just a guess on I could be off of mark, but I would guess this director Christoph Gans probably said, well, I'm not gonna sacrifice the integrity of it in the name of making, an extra couple $1,000,000, because, by the way, Christoph, I've got it pulled up here, not like a totally prolific filmmaker. And I don't really mean that as like a derogatory way or like criticizing of him, but he's not somebody who puts out a movie every 2 years. I'm looking at his filmography right now, and he made Silent Hill in 2006. Then he didn't make a movie again until 2014. He did an adaptation of Beauty and the Beast, and he hasn't made anything since. This next Silent Hill movie will be his first movie in a long time.
Wait, which Beauty and the Beast movie?
This one, I think it's, let's see. This one it's got Vincent Castle and Lea Seydoux in it. Came out in 2014.
Oh, he's on a TV show?
Not a TV show. Looks like it was. It might even be in French.
Oh.
So a bit more of an international take.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it looks like it was reviewed pretty well. I've not seen it. I've not seen any of his other movies. But he mostly plays in the realm of horror and fantasy. And yeah, he's only got a couple projects here. So when I say he's not prolific, I only really mean it seems like he's not somebody who's going to bother to put the time, energy, and passion into a movie unless he really gives a shit about it.
So, are they going to do with a new Silent Hill movie what they did with the Halloween movies, which means it is a direct sequel, the new one, a direct sequel to the 2006 one, wiping away that other one.
I think they'll get to, no matter what, kind of have their cake and eat it too, because so like the other Silent Hill Revelations is a direct sequel to this. It's about Sharon. She's an adult now, and it's Sean Bean comes back, and they have to go back to Silent Hill, this and that. So they kind of close off that plot anyway. And Silent Hill 2, the game, is completely unrelated to the first game. So it's a completely new cast of characters. It doesn't really tie into the cult stuff that much. It's even more psychological and personal, and doesn't really have anything to do with the first game. So if I'm Christoph, I probably am going to pretend the second movie doesn't exist anyway, but I don't think it'll matter too much because it'll be such its own thing.
Okay.
Because that's the nature of the game anyway. But yeah, I think he'll probably just have this first movie in his mind. But I just thought that was fascinating. He's obviously not a guy who like every 2-3 years will take a phone call to work on whatever it is that is, his agent shopping around or something. He's obviously a guy who's only going to make the movies that he's interested in. So the fact that he's going to come back and do another Silent Hill movie, to me, is a huge endorsement of the project, and that they'll probably, hopefully give him pretty strong creative control, because I think a lot of Silent Hill fans have reassessed this looking back. When it came out, it wasn't very well received, I think, even by the fans, because it even as precious as it was, it still changed the little things, and very passionate fan base. So even changing the little things, going from Harry instead doing Rose, changing some of the Alessa plot, changing some of the cult plot, including Pyramid Head, like those little nitpicky things are what made fans go, oh, this isn't good. But I think in hindsight, a lot of us are going like, oh shit, this actually was pretty damn good. We didn't appreciate it when it came out. Could have been a lot worse, because it was a lot worse in the second one.
Talking about video game movies for a second, I know not really a horror movie, but I'm curious. What did you think about the newest Mortal Kombat movie that came out last year?
I thought it was fine. Very, very dumb and hokey, right? But like Mortal Kombat that's kind of the nature of the thing. This isn't Shakespeare. This is an adaptation of fighting games, and I don't know the story of Mortal Kombat nearly as well as I know the story of Silent Hill, so I can't say even ultimately how faithful it was. But I think it was fun. I think the action was good, and I think it was what I would imagine a Mortal Kombat movie would be. It's a little less campy than the original ones back in the day, but I liked it fine. I'll go watch another one. They're making another one, I believe.
It was a good movie, but it was missing a very important thing on the Mortal Kombat story.
What's that?
And it didn't have a tournament. The whole game is about a fighting tournament, and it didn't have one tournament.
That is true. That is totally how they make movies now. They go like, oh, the first one's not going to be a tournament. No, the second or third one will be the tournament. First, we've got to, establish the world and the characters and yada yada. It's like, I don't know, man. Just make them fight in a tournament. That's what we showed up for.
Right. And they made this new character that was kind of pointless at the end of it, but it was a fun movie. I like fighting and stuff.
Yeah, it was fine. The Sub-Zero stuff was super cool. Sub-Zero and Scorpion, right? They were dope.
Right.
That's like all I know. I know Sub-Zero and Scorpion. They were there. They were cool. I liked it.
Exactly. That's all you really need.
Yeah.
Anyway, man, is there anything else you want to go over about Silent Hill, or did you pretty much say everything you wanted to say?
Something that did stand out to me this time watching, because it'd been a few years since I watched it at all, and because again, as we mentioned earlier, it was in my thoughts because of this new one coming, or at least this new one entering production, and I would say this is aged pretty well thematically, and that can be kind of exceptional and rare to see, especially a movie, mid 2000 horror movie. Sometimes these things don't. Both on the surface level as a movie, I think it works really well, but also thematically, I think once you get past the interdimensional world of it and you get past the monsters of it, and Silent Hill again, it's a very psychological series. It really has more to do with who you are underneath than it does with the monsters chasing you outside of yourself. And when you get into the back half, which I think the movie slows down a little too much sometimes when you meet the church and the cult and stuff like that. I think it kind of, I'm not gonna say it grinds to a halt, but it definitely, for me, I can feel the movie winds down around there, and then you still have about 40 minutes left. But when you get to them, the movie, I think, becomes more about like the dangers of hysteria, right? And
right.
or the dangers of blind faith and groupthink, and what that can lead a populace to do, and what terrible acts they might commit as a means of believing it'll save them, right? I mean, this is a movie and a story where a group of devout people who would believe themselves in the moral right literally burn a child to death because they convince themselves it'll save their souls at the end of their lives. And I just think that without getting too much into it, I think like just where we are as a culture right now, whether that's socially or politically, mentally, I feel like stories like that age really, really well.
Yep.
And it would be easy maybe in 2006 to watch this and go like that's crazy, or play the game and go that's crazy. But in a way, as I get older and as I watch the world change, it's not that crazy. It's not that crazy that somebody could convince themselves of something like that.
Right. Oh. Well, I don't know about everybody else, but you made one more fan of Silent Hill today, and that's me. So I'll be looking out.
Spreading the gospel of Silent Hill.
There's no like release date or anything, right?
The new one, no, they just a couple of weeks ago announced that it would even exist, and they announced that the director was coming back for it, and that it was Silent Hill 2, the game. So beyond that, casting, release date, any of that, we don't know yet. But if you are familiar with Silent Hill 2, you can definitely make some guesses as to what you should expect to see in it. And if you are a fan of it, I would. Unfortunately, a lot of these games are, they're on very old consoles now, PS1, PS2.
Yeah.
And there's some more recent games, but those aren't very good. So like the classic ones are very old school. They did some remasters and stuff, but also those somehow weren't very good. But if you find yourself in a position to play those original games, or even just, watch them on, watch somebody stream it or play it on YouTube or something, they're fantastic. They're terrific. They hold up. Just really, it's no coincidence that the fan base is as passionate about this as they are, including the director of this film. They're just terrific games, and I'm excited. We went from having no Silent Hill stuff for years to a remake of the classic game, 2 new games, a new movie. So I hope all that stuff, fingers crossed, actually comes to fruition, and that it's actually good, because it's been a long time since we've had good Silent Hill 2. So if you enjoy the film, want to get more of it, there's so much more stuff you could check out in Silent Hill, and it's very much worth your time.
It sounds fun. Thank you so much for coming. So Taylor, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you, my man?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, please check out my YouTube channel, What Real Entertainment. That is WATREEL Entertainment here on YouTube. I run that alongside my very good friend Matt Thomas. Movie reviews, podcasts, trailer reactions, all the stuff movie fans love to see on YouTube. We've got it over there. So give that a look. Something else I've been personally doing lately that I really enjoy, I'm actually going to do it tonight too, is I've been streaming on Twitch lately. I've been streaming games. Get this, I mostly play horror games. Big surprise, but not exclusively. But that is twitch.tv. Actually, I got your chat pulled up. I'll throw it in the URL in your chat because I'm going to do some tonight too. Twitch.tv/Watt. That's WATREELENT. That is Watt Real Int at Twitch. Go ahead and check us out tonight once we get done here, like 10-15 minutes or so. I'm going to check out the Resident Evil Village story DLC called Shadows of Rose. I loved Resident Evil Village, so I'm excited to go back to it. And then I'll be playing some God of War throughout the rest of the month once we finish that. I stream basically 2 nights a week. So if you're in the headspace for some Twitch streams, if you like horror games, I'm your guy. So go check us out there. And on Watt Real Entertainment, I'm also in the process of bringing back my horror movie podcast called Really Scared, which I host alongside my very good friend Connor Breedlove. We just did our first episode all year a couple weeks ago for Halloween Ends. Very polarizing horror film.
What did you think of that movie? I cannot real quick.
Yeah. So I'll try to give you as short of answer as I can. The first time I watched it, I didn't like it very much. The second time I watched it, I liked it a lot because I had kind of retooled my expectation of it. And did you saw that one?
No, not yet. I'm going to, but not yet.
If you like Halloween, if you like slashers, I recommend it. It's not going to be the movie you probably think it is, which is more of a symptom of the marketing of the movie. But I ended up finding a lot to enjoy in it. And we talked about it on our channel for 4 hours. So,
wow.
So we found a lot to discuss in it. Not all of our episodes are that long. But yeah, we're working on bringing back Really Scared on a more regular basis. And there's lots of episodes archived on the YouTube channel. All sorts of horror films we discussed. And if you're a fan of or if you were a fan, I should say, of the movie Trivia Schmodown, which I suspect your listeners might just be. We had a lot of great folks from that world on as guests too. Adam Collins, William Bibiani, Video Drew, JTE, all sorts of great folks. So Really Scared over on Watt Real Entertainment and twitch.tv/WattRealEnt. That's where you can find me talking a lot.
Awesome. About horror, I'm thinking. And you guys can find me right here on this channel, basically on 5 days a week, 6 days if you include Sunday, and yeah, we'll see you next week with another guest, but until then, have a good week.
Stay spooky.
Bye, guys.